All right, Ian, our pal Blake Harris, author of Console Wars: The History, the Future of VR book. He wrote a foreword for a certain NES guidebook, and he's now currently working on a book with Larry David. That sounds incredible to be able to talk to Larry David. He also produced a documentary based upon the Console Wars book, which was historical fiction. It was based on interviews, but he made a narrative and dialogue on things that could have or probably happened, but
Sure.
So it's fiction based upon nonfiction. It's like that weird in between. This is a documentary, though. It's totally a straight documentary, nonfiction, with interviewees and a cute sort of video game art and cutscene reenactments there. So this came out, Console Wars. We got an early preview link. We watched it, and it's gotten good reviews. And I enjoyed this documentary. It's about 90 minutes. It details. It starts at Tom Kalinske being hired by Sega to bring him on the flailing Genesis, because he used to work in toys and marketing in order to turn the ship around. And it goes from there and coming up with Sega, and then going all the way towards it sputtering out after the disastrous release of the Sega Saturn. So it covers like 6 years in time here. What I thought was interesting about this documentary was that they managed to get all the ex-Nintendo and Sega employees, and they didn't care about being honest. They didn't try to be nice about people from the other company that they said they didn't like them or didn't appreciate things they did, and they were totally honest, and that was good. They were very emotive about the experiences. Even today, you can see the rivalry between them, saying, "Oh, that was BS," or "I can't believe they did that back then." Like, the rival marketing things about, "Oh, blast processing was total, like bullshit." Someone from Nintendo said it. It might have been Gail Tilden said that, and it was just interesting to see the perspectives of the people that were behind the trenches going through that, because we were just on the playground yelling about. When I was a kid, I said blast processing is bullshit when I was a kid, but to see the employees talk about that stuff was really interesting. How they volleyed back and forth on the battles.
I watched it. I enjoyed it for the most part. I watching it though, and to go off what you said, I always wonder how much of that is we got to make it seem like there's conflict for TV, and how much of it is truly deep-seated. Do these people really still hate each other or dislike each other over business decisions from, 25 years ago? I personally find it easier to separate business from personal, and I realize that some people can't, and I realize that if it's your life and it's a big deal like it would have been back then working for these video game companies, that maybe some of these things do stick, maybe grudges do hold.
It's your livelihood.
Yes, but I also want, but they if everyone's super chummy on TV as well, it doesn't make for as good of a narrative. So yes. I do believe that there's probably still some bad blood there, but I wonder if it's as much as it seems to let on.
Yeah, I mean, they almost got in a fight in the street. Tom Kalinske and his counterpart from Nintendo, I forget his name. Was it Peter? God. Now is my one problem with the documentaries. It was hard to
Howard. It was Howard Lincoln. I'm pretty sure.
It was Howard Lincoln?
I'm pretty sure it was Howard Lincoln.
It's hard to keep track of all the different names.
It is. Yes.
Like, that lady's from Sega, that lady's from Nintendo, he's from here, but it's hard to keep track of, what exactly do they do for the company at a certain point in one of their names. I hate to say it, in positions. That was the only thing, because there's literally they talked to I think about 5 or 6 people representing both sides, and it keeps going back and forth there. Everyone came off, authentic. Everyone had some little digs here and there, except for good old Howard Phillips. He was just a nice, hey, everything's rosy. Oh, Sega, Sonic was interesting, and they did well. I love Howard Phillips. That's how he is in real life, though. He's very nice and authentic.
Yes.
It was good. I was okay meeting my hero, Howard Phillips. They say don't meet your heroes. I don't mind meeting Howard.
No, Howard's one you can meet. He's very friendly, very nice.
No, I didn't meet another one that wasn't as good, but Howard Phillips was a good one. Good hero to meet there. So, yeah, like I said, it was entertaining. I thought the one thing about these historical video game documentaries I've seen, and with way more with high score, is that, and I understand why they do it. It's probably from the network. They have to, for some reason, find a way to constantly try to make it more over the top, funny humor stuff. And I get that they try to associate that with video games. I just wish I could see one of these documentaries that plays it a little more straight and it's not constantly throwing in humorous stuff, either whether it's in the little cut scenes or what have you. Like I said, I get it, but it still leans on, video games are for kids and humorous. But they were well done, and it wasn't all the same graphic style. Like the problem I had with Netflix High Score was that it was all this weird early 90s PC graphic style, which did not fit the content. Here, it changed it up radically depending on what they were talking about. They had like Street Fighter 2. They had an overhead. One of my favorite things was like an overhead Pac-Man game when you had the Sega of Japan evil, or let's say harsh, president running around gobbling up the workers.
Nakayama-san, I think.
Yes, that's what it was. So like he was going around gobbling. So it was funny with his weird hair going.
With his comb over flowing behind him.
Very clever, very cute little interstitial cutscenes to describe the environment. But like I said, I'd love to see a documentary sort of play it straighter. I
don't mind drier documentaries, but I didn't mind the humor. The humor was light enough. It's when the humor is very bad that I find it unnecessary. But I thought it was fairly light. I didn't think it relied all that much on humor, honestly. I thought the funny parts were amusing. I liked the cartoon, the cartoon / animated intro where Kolinsky is being taken to Japan.
Yeah, he's still
in his shorts. Yeah, he's in
the
his shorts
beach
the whole time. Yeah, like he literally just got.
That's what I mean. It was like,
okay,
beach. I get it.
I thought it was funny. It was cute. Necessary, no, but yeah, I liked it. I don't know that I thought the time warp part was necessary, where they go back and talk about the beginnings of Nintendo.
Yeah, about halfway through,
and it dabbles a little on the in the video game crash and stuff like that. I would love to see a video game documentary that doesn't feel the need to fucking talk about the video game crash at every opportunity. It's like the origin story in a superhero movie. We're getting to the point where every video game documentary is going to talk about the crash somewhat. And I realize that it's an important thing to cover, and if you're covering a large span of time, if you're trying to cover multiple eras like High Score did or the video game years did, you want to cover it. But I did not think that there was a need to cover it in this one. I think going into it, you could have just focused on the war, the console war itself. There were things that they could have talked about that they did. I don't know that part really made sense to me.
They just spent a lot of time on the crash. They have to mention it just because you have to mention that when you talk about Nintendo coming to the US. You have to bring that up.
But you don't. If it's about the console war, you don't have to always have to bring it up.
They wanted to show that because when they present Nintendo as this giant Goliath, they wanted to go back in time to show, hey, this is how Sega used to be in the US. They were kind of small. That's what they were trying to do.
Sure, I get that. I'm just saying I don't think it needs to be brought up every single time.
They didn't cover it in High Score, surprisingly.
Oh, that's right. You said they didn't. They talked about how
said it's coming, but they don't show it. And it's like, why can't you not show that? So they didn't do that for there. So there was a couple of historical things. The pacing was good up until the last 20 minutes. That was the one thing where I didn't like. Where
it did kind of fall apart. It seemed like it didn't know where to go once it got to the
PlayStation.
Sony stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Once it started juggling 3 balls instead of 2, it seemed like.
Well, they could have, but I think they, for some reason, I don't like how this is with modern cinema and with documentaries. They had this 90-minute, I think, cutoff they wanted to hit no matter what. And I think the film suffers a little bit because of that. I think if you had 10 more minutes, maybe 15 minutes, you could have went into the Sony stuff a little bit deeper. You could have went into the Saturn a little bit deeper than what they did.
They glossed. They didn't even mention that the Saturn was surprise released at E3. I was watching for that. They brought up the Saturn release, but they didn't talk about how it was in stores now.
Oh yeah, the one part was like, oh, you can get it right now.
I mean, that's pretty important. And they talked about how they were rushing it, and I have no idea how you leave out something that big, especially when it's part of the reason why one of the many reasons why the Saturn failed.
Yeah, they try to build in the last 25 minutes. They try to build, I guess, the distrust between Sega of America and Sega in Japan, saying, well, they didn't agree with here for the first time,
which was good and interesting. I mean, that's a good thing to have up there.
But they should have went back previous and started earlier with the 32X, and they didn't mention the 32X at all. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with the film.
They showed it,
but they didn't say anything about it.
Yeah,
they showed the Sega CD for like 2 little clips, but didn't mention the launch or anything. So I think I would have rather have seen the story that's more in the book about the Sega CD does all right. 32X is a massive failure. And that massive failure led into the Saturn's failure. Not having that bridge,
yes,
I think does a disservice to the story, because they try to build it off of, well, we had a fail dealing with Silicon Graphics, who then ended up doing Donkey Kong Country and the N64, but the N64 isn't what killed Sega, though.
Right.
So I think like it's that's nice to bring that up. That you should have listened to me, because maybe if Silicon Graphics worked with Sega, things would have been different. But I think not telling the 32X story is a huge thing that should have been there.
That was my big takeaway at the end was, we're talking about the console war. If you want to hit 90 minutes, you can leave out that Nintendo 1984 bullshit.
Retrospective.
You can leave out the retrospective, and you can, and like I said, it's a good story, but I don't think they needed to derail the pace of the film to do that, when they could have spent that 10-15 minutes on, like you said, the 32X and the Sega CD more thoroughly.
You only needed 5 minutes for the 32X, probably. You could have got through the 32X in terms of, they wanted to push it out. We said we're not comfortable putting this out. We just put out the CD, and then sort of build up that early mistrust between the two, Sega of America and Sega. Because I mean, we talked about this a few months ago, how horribly the 32X did. It did disaster. They only sold 800,000.
Yeah.
That's horrifying to sell that little. Like that was the early, not nail in the coffin, but you built up the customer distrust that soon. Okay, we'll go to the Sega Saturn now, and then you can't have two failures like that in a row.
Right.
You can't. And they did. And that's what it was even before the Dreamcast, which they didn't get to, which I don't think you needed to for this to bring up, because Tom Kalinske left the company and was kind of following his
No, they
path.
left it in 96. They basically stopped at the launch of the N64. And I mean, the Dreamcast was technically post-PlayStation, so they didn't need to bring it up.
So that was my only big thing. I would have loved to seen the third. They probably, I guarantee you, they shot that stuff.
Oh, they absolutely did.
Yeah, they shot. I want to see it.
Like I said, they showed the 30. That was another weird thing towards the end for me, is they showed the 32X. They showed the Sega CD. It was like they had footage that they had intended to use for voiceover or interview that they did not use.
Yeah, if you had 10 more minutes here, I think even 10 more minutes, you could have fleshed out Sega CD and 32X in 10 minutes total. About 5 minutes each. I think you could have done.
Could have gotten the important stuff out there. Yes.
Yeah. So that was, like I said, that was it. That and just one minor historical inaccuracy is that they talk about, well, we're not coming to the Super Nintendo with blood in Mortal Kombat. So then they show a shot of Mortal Kombat 2 with green blood. That's Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 had blood on Super Nintendo. So they should have shown. They should have shown the real Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat,
which was the white sweat.
Yeah, or gray sweat, or whatever you want to say. Like, it was not. It wasn't
not the green,
and it wasn't Mortal Kombat 2. That's the only thing that I dislike. It's like, okay, well, they did that for effect, but that wasn't the game. So the Super Nintendo 2 Mortal Kombat 2 is great. Like, that's fine. Like, by then they figured it out, and I like that they had the. I loved the fact that they got so much of the conference and E3 footage and stuff on the floor. I loved that. I loved like just the random stuff of like. You know, they're like showing the floor of Mario, and then there's Howard Phillips just playing a game, and he turns around and looks at, like, I love that shit. Like, that's great that they got so much of that stock file stuff. Probably maybe from the, I don't know who would have had some of that footage. That wasn't like YouTube footage. Like, the quality was too good on that stuff.
Right.
You know, and then they had like the conference stuff of all the, you know, Howard Lincoln and everyone else. You know, they're like dressed as like, you know, big game hunters, and they shoot and they show Sonic being dead. It's like, that's fun stuff to see. I hadn't seen some of that stuff before. So check it out. It's on CBS All Access, not for resale. It was a fun time. It was good to see the story being told like that, and yeah, it was well produced.
Yeah, it was good.